started. 3, 2. What it do, my people? What it is? We are back again in a new scene with two people that I'm very fond of at their business this time. So we are in a different location. This is Culture Up Podcast. I'm Jordan Smith Willis, your host. This is Tim Luscher. This is Dylan Greenwood. Just y'all introduce yourself a little bit.
I think you did a fine job. So I am Tim Luscher. I do own Sig Luscher Brewery in Frankfort, Kentucky. Dylan is my brewmaster and master brewer. Dylan, you want to add anything to that?
I guess I've been here since the beginning. It's been me and Tim since we started. And like you said, I'm the brewmaster. I do the brews and he sells it.
Yes. So going over where we're at right now, we're at Sig Luscher. This is Tim's business, and we're in an awesome little room that he has that, I've had many of beers in, great beers. I feel like I spent most of my 2020 here.
I definitely spent all of my 2020 here.
Yeah.
We're in about a 100-foot radius of this place, which there are worse places to be.
This was my favorite part of 2020, honestly. I mean, me and my whole crew spent a lot of time here, and you welcomed us with open arms, and I think that's around the time that we actually met.
We were really bored. That was it. We opened everybody with open arms.
Yeah. I think during that time period,
I'm joking. We loved having you down. 2020, as bad as it was, really brought the community together.
It did.
You finally slowed down to actually learn about people, and that was a big deal then, because half joking, we're bored. We kind of were. We were lucky enough to be open that entire time, but with lots of restrictions.
It was tons. It was hard for y'all.
It was kind of just feeling our way through it. It was unprecedented. We didn't know what to do. We kind of just made the best of the situation. Like Tim said, it was awesome to have you down here. There was a handful of people who kind of became our lockdown regulars. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty cool because people didn't know what to do, and they wanted to come down, have a beer, and talk to somebody in real life. We wanted to socialize
in some way, shape, or form, and even though we couldn't be hugging all up on each other or anything like that, we could still enjoy a beer together and be able to, be in the same outdoor space. And
we slowed down enough to, as mentioned earlier, just kind of learn about each other, because we weren't going anywhere. There was no hustle bustle, so
it was actually nice for that reason. I do miss that part of COVID.
I'm kind of nostalgic about it, actually.
4 years past it now, and now we're here, and it's like, man, 4 years past felt like yesterday, first of all.
Sure.
It really did. Of course, that entire year was kind of just a blur, because, thinking back, it's like, I had so much time to do these things, but at the time, you're going, I could do that, but what's tomorrow going to bring? And
also we had only been open for a year and a couple months at that point. So
that's what I was about to ask. Before COVID hit, how long were you guys open?
We opened up the end of 2018, and I mean very, very, very end of 2018.
Yeah. So y'all barely had any time. Because everything shut down in March 2019?
Yeah, mid-March.
2000, 2020.
Okay.
Yes, 2019.
It was 2020.
We had a great first year.
You had a full year to get going.
Yeah.
And had to really just hope for the best after that.
Yeah, kind of put on the brakes and say, all right, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Which a lot of things, good things did come out of it. We talked about community, but for the business itself, that first year we ran so hard, being completely new, kind of making it up as we went along. Mm-hmm. And then 2020, you got to kind of sit back and go, okay, why are we doing it like this? We could do it like this. Or we could, a lot of things that we are now staples in our, either in the brewery or in the tap room, came out of COVID, because I wasn't joking. We were bored. So the hot dog.
Just test some stuff.
Yeah. So the hot dog menus came out of COVID because we just got tired of the same stuff or same things.
The
slushies came out of COVID.
The slushies are hitting town.
That was, that never would have thought about that if COVID hadn't really happened. Mm-hmm. And we were just literally kind of tired of drinking our own beer at that point, and we wanted something else. Let's test it out.
Yeah, and everything was to go at that point too. So if somebody didn't want a beer, they wanted a mixed drink or something.
It was to go. Yeah, I forgot that they did that. So it gave y'all time to kind of slow down and kind of revamp y'all's game plan. And be like, okay, this is the direction that we want Sig to go in.
It really was. Like I said, we maybe would not have had that time to kind of reflect if we had just kept going at the same speed in 2019. And thankfully, we're back beyond our speed, then even faster. But like I said, it wasn't a wasted year.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. We made a lot of memories, and it sounds like you guys got on a good game plan and strategized enough to make it to where you guys are right now. So, how did SIG come about? Like, how long has this been a thing, and when did it start? And...
The current version has been 5 years. The entire history of us, we've been around since 1855.
1855.
In Frankfurt since 1865.
1865. So where did it originate?
Switzerland, moved to Memphis. Memphis isn't the greatest place to have beer, and definitely not when certain things transpired during that time period. So we got out. Civil War. Yeah, we decided that was not our fight. So we left, went back to Switzerland, came back. Things calmed down. There was an opportunity in Frankfurt. So we immigrated back, came to Frankfurt, have been here ever since as a family. SIG did a lot. I mean, that time period was kind of, I'll say the golden age. It was more like platinum age of what we consider just mainstream anything in the U.S. Beer was not the national beverage. Bourbon was not a real thing. It's whiskey and some of it was bourbon, but not
to
what we
furniture
think.
Polish.
Basically furniture. Yeah, it was. You're making it's moonshine. Moonshine. Yeah. The things that we just take for granted were just kind of being invented at that time. We just happened to be in the epicenter of all of that in Frankfurt. I mean, you had Colonel Taylor with kind of really the birth of what modern bourbon is. You had SIG here making the beer, who also coincidentally was kind of the birth of where beer went to, because prior to that, the U.S. was really kind of an ale culture, more English. So, and Dylan will get into this in a minute about the difference between ales and lagers, but we were Swiss and we did lagers, so that really kind of changed things, but it's a different type of beer, and you couldn't just do it any place. It was slow to make. It took special temperatures, but all the beer that we think of today is probably 95% lager. Ales are more craft beery because they are quicker.
Okay.
But if you think of Budweiser, Miller, Coors, et cetera, what beer is really that lager. At that time, though, they were hard to make, difficult to ship because I said the temperatures weren't right. SIG was very instrumental in that. He patented one of the first ice machines, and the ice was key, because to make a lager, you have to keep it cold.
Okay.
And that happened here in Frankfurt, was that kind of first commercial ice machine. Because of that, you then saw the rise of national beer.
That is wild, right?
So we'll take a little bit of credit for that. We were mentioned a couple years ago in Wired magazine, kind of in passing, but we were mentioned.
Yeah,
not by name, but it was a little German brewer in the Midwest invented the ice. Invented ice. Yeah, it was said. We've got the patent on the wall in the other room.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Do we get anything from that? No, we get bragging rights. And a really cool story.
When it comes to the culture of things, I think that's huge, though, the bragging rights, and just like who led the way to be able to have what we have today.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So is lager not a craft beer? Is that not considered
craft beer? Breweries are starting to dip their toes into lagers these days. But at the inception of craft beer was all ales, basically. And only in, I think we hit it at the a really good time, because it was about a year after we started brewing our lagers that other brands, craft brew,
really started to see other lagers come out.
Yeah, and in the early days of craft, it was being experimental and let's throw something at the wall and see if it sticks and stuff like that. And then they realized, some people just want a beer that tastes like beer, and we need to cater to that customer as well, not just
I've seen
your
some
hop
pretty
heads.
wild beers recently.
It's still out there, but it's calming down.
It is calming down.
Comes
I think
and
it became a
goes.
craze for a second, and everybody really got super experimental, and now I think it's going back to the forefront beers, I guess you would say.
It's the sellable beers, and not to be, I guess it's not snarky's not the right, but that is what Americans by and large drink. There is a craft community that likes to try a bunch of things, different things, and some of them is really good. And we wouldn't have a lot of, even on the mainstream beers, some better beers that are now out there
if we didn't
experiment. And with anything, the market kind of regulates itself. You get too weird, it just kind of falls by the wayside.
And I think we kind of toe the line a little bit too, because like just tonight I heard somebody come up and order Budweiser. Like, no, we don't sell Budweiser, but we make a really drinkable lager.
You do.
And most, I'd say 95% of people who try it are like, oh yeah, that's good, I can drink that.
Yeah.
You know, but we also do a little bit of experimentation and get a little out there sometimes, and your craft beer nerd can find something they like here too.
So you guys spend a lot of time together doing these beer, like tasting the beers and everything, and you know, over time, like I'm sure y'all built chemistry together to learn what each other like and everything. But how did y'all first meet?
Very coincidentally.
Yeah.
It was the inception of kind of the idea of this place. Right time for Frankfurt, right time for myself, right time for Dylan, and things just kind of clicked very quickly. Between the time of us having just even the idea, or me agreeing to even think about reopening the brewery, 2 months later we have the building. 2 weeks later I meet Dylan, not knowing I even need a brewer. 2 weeks before that, I'm in from New York, and it was kind of like at a party, someone made an offhand comment, when you're reopening the brewery. And I said, well, if these things happen, I'll do that.
Right.
Next couple of days, those things happened. And I'm like, all right, this is a little too easy.
It seems like a snowball effect.
Dylan was in transition after Fall City, and I was lucky enough to meet him at that point, because anybody else would kill to scoop him up. But it was just, things just kind of clicked, and we wanted to do something different. As Dylan said, craft brewing at that time was a lot more experimental, not as nuanced as it is now. I mean, this has been years, and craft brewing has gone in waves. You had the 90s craft brewing, which is different than the 2000s craft brewing, and at each time these bubbles, the stronger companies survive.
Right.
And then the rest of them kind of fall out. But in the 2000s craft brewing, especially during that time period, it was very IPA heavy.
Yeah, it was. Not huge on IPA.
I appreciate a really good IPA.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's so many that are okay or not, and
everybody's palate's different.
And my passion wasn't really in making the beer, it was selling the beer, and also it was my family heritage. And so going through all the research of, okay, if you're getting into the brewing world, I want to make money. If I'm not the brewer especially, I want to get a really good brewer that knows what they're doing, but also really tell the story of my family history, of the brewery, which we knew very little about other than where it was. So this is actually the third brewery we've had. The second one was across the street from where we're sitting and got torn down in early 2000s.
Okay.
So
they did all the
that was the renovation, the transportation. And so unfortunately, when we talked about the temperatures and lagers, we had lager caves. They were part of that demolition. So everything's timing. A few years later, beer becomes, what it is again now. And, that would have been a major tourist attraction any place else. It's just, like I said, we're blessed for a lot of things in Frankfurt, and we should focus really on what we have.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
For sure. And that's why it's important to keep people like you all around, to keep the culture of things going around, and
I appreciate that.
Making our town exactly what we wanted. It might not always be what we wanted at all times, but at least put the pressure on to let people know, people do care about the town.
We've definitely seen some growth towards that in the 5 years we've been open.
A lot of progression. Right now.
I won't pat myself on the back, but I'll pat him on the back. I think he had something to do with that.
I think it takes a team.
It does. Well, I wouldn't be here without Dylan. And as I said, it was very fortuitous when we got together, and it really was kind of a weird meeting. I had not planned on hiring anybody, and went to meet Dylan up in Louisville, and we're talking. Dylan's basically giving me the rundown of his background and everything you would think if a brewer to his caliber was talking about joining another craft brewery or an opening craft brewery, they'd want to hear. And then I stopped him after all that. I go, we're only making one beer. He goes, what? I go, no, we're only going to start. We're doing a Pilsner. That's
I talked him down off that hill, though.
Yeah. we do more than that, but our flagship is the Pilsner. But that's what I really meant by it, was that we needed, with a brand that had this much potential as ours, we didn't need 20 beers and get muddied up and just forgotten about. Budweiser's Budweiser. You don't think of Budweiser anything else. Bud Light's kind of gone off that, but Budweiser is a lager. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we wanted to make our claim, was bringing back a historic beer that was known at that time as, in many cases, the world's best lager, and we've got documentation for that too. It may be tongue-in-cheek, but it still ended up in print.
All I know is I've had my favorite beers from this place right here.
Oh,
so
appreciate that.
And you know, I move and groove quite a bit, and I go different places. And when I go different places, I definitely try the craft of the area. You know, and something about home. I might be a little bit biased towards Frankfurt too, but there's something about Frankfurt when people come here, we do craft things well. And just whatever we're doing. I'm not sure what craft beer is, and that's kind of my next question. So, like, what would y'all consider craft beer, and what are the differences between these beers of like?
Well, the industry definition switches and changes depending on how big Sam Adams gets.
Yeah, I was actually going to describe it in bourbon terms. I think originally craft beer was kind of like, you think small batch.
Right.
Yeah.
Small batch whiskey, small batch bourbon,
That's
whatever.
basically the idea.
That was kind of the idea, but he's not wrong at all. Because now, as I said, we've had multiple waves of craft beer. Mm-hmm. No one would think Stone is a craft brewery. They are. At least that's how they started.
So. That's what I was thinking. I was like,
but they're pretty massive.
Really?
Yes, they absolutely are. Bell's is a
craft brewery.
Started as one. Goose Island started as a craft brewery.
Got you. So do you think that they started as one and kind of found like their lane, and did they stick with that?
Goose Island got bought out by Budweiser. So whether or not their craft is actually,
up for debate.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't think
I
don't think it's craft at all. No, it is. But that is how it started. And that's how they got the attention of Budweiser, because Budweiser wasn't making an IPA. So they went and bought one.
Okay.
It just means like small scale, basically, is at the heart of what craft is supposed to be, and that anything that like that is small scale and artisan made, just have a little more attention and a little more artistry to it.
Right. So would you guys consider yourself craft beer?
I consider ours historic beer.
Historic beer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heritage brewery.
Or heritage brewery. Yeah, that's it's a little different. Ours, what we do is small batch, but when we do experiment with beer, I've always had kind of one thing in one direction for Dylan, and thankfully I've never second-guessed anything he's done, is that whatever we do, just make it the best that we can do.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a beer with multiple types of things in it, and we can get into what those things might be. It's just, if we put a Pilsner out, make it the best Pilsner. If we put you're drinking the porter?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're drinking a porter, pre-prohibition porter, make it the best porter we have. And so when people come in, it's not our take on something. It's just, this should be a very good example of what you should get, what you're tasting.
And my philosophy going into it, and has been throughout, is, Sig was a European guy who learned in Europe and learned the traditional styles, but he came to America and did his thing here and kind of adapted it to the American way of doing things. And so that's kind of how I wanted to approach things. Is we're gonna be firmly rooted in the traditions of where Sig came from the European lagers and all that. Mm-hmm. But we also, he lived in America. We're in America. We're gonna have a little
or twist to it.
Yeah. And that's the most American thing. We take things from other cultures and we make them our own.
Well, it's a melting pot. So the mix of culture here is what it's all about, the diversity. So being able to take, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and bringing it all together to make what you guys make is...
Yeah. So we tell people that we're, a European lager house, but really we're bigger than that. We're a little more expansive than that. We take from both traditions. We'd never done an IPA, and that's not really on brand for us. But we have experimented.
About that.
Yeah, but we're also not, very strict. Like German lager has to be 4 ingredients and only 4 ingredients. You know, we make a strawberry Hefeweizen and some other stuff.
So
some
you still do some
sours.
experimental stuff.
We do some experimental stuff, but we don't get too far out there. I don't think.
And I think when we do the experimental, there's a story behind it. There's a reason we're doing it.
Right.
And 2, simple is better. Pretty much always. And so Dylan mentioned German, the 4 ingredient German beers. Most of ours are that. The ones we do add things to, like I said, there's a reason to it. And it's much harder to create a simple beer well than it is to just throw ingredients into a glass and call it a beer.
Okay.
There's nothing to hide behind.
Yeah, you can't hide behind. And back to, you mentioned the IPAs. There are really good IPAs out there, but understanding what the style of that beer and the kind of the history and heritage of it, it's hoppy for a reason, so it doesn't go bad. It's got preservatives, it's a natural preservative. It's also a natural astringent. You get too much in it, you really can't taste the beer. You can't really taste anything. Right. So, all the nuances, if you did it really well, you're going to kind of lose those. And also, if you didn't do it really well, you're going to kind of hide it.
Yeah.
That's not something we do. Dylan's, as far as his beers are, he's pretty naked out there in those beers. He's not hiding behind anything. What he said,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And when we add something and we go past those 4, there's a story like the strawberry Hefeweizen Dylan mentioned. Hefes are a German-style beer. The strawberries are because we've grown strawberries for 150 years. And they happen to marry really, happen to really be good together. Yeah. And that was one of the, surprise. It's coming back.
Yeah, it's coming back about a month or 2 now.
So what I just told you is is the story behind the strawberry Hefe of why we do it. The real reason is Dylan and I were tossing around, would it even be good? And I needed to know how many strawberries we needed. And so I called a supplier up one night and said, hey, I just need can you give me a price on 800 pounds of strawberries? Sure. I'll call you in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call, your strawberries are here. I'm like, what? Yeah. That's kind of like, how much? And they told me the price. I go, all right, we can do that. Luckily, we had Dylan had made 2 batches. And when he did the first Hefeweizen without the strawberries, sold really well. Like we sold out in about 2.5 hours for a keg. Wow. We did the strawberry Hefeweizen, we sold out in 17 minutes. We went the strawberry Hefeweizen.
I would say so.
And
17 minutes?
17 minutes, a full keg in 17 minutes. So that's 144 beers.
So did y'all have to throw an event for that, or was that?
No, we just announced strawberry Hefeweizen, and then people just showed up.
Yeah. Man, that is support and love right there, for sure.
It was a very interesting night. So we'll talk about that later.
How do you guys choose what's next? Is it part of the experimental phase, or do you guys, because you guys do go through seasonal beers, kind of?
Yeah, I'm a very seasonal beer drinker myself.
Okay.
And so I always think about it according to seasons. Porter is more of a winter. We're getting out of winter now, but we're approaching spring, summer, which is why the strawberry Hefe is the next in the rotation. And we also always do an Oktoberfest, and obviously that's very seasonal.
I think that's a big one for y'all too, right?
It is a big one.
Yeah.
It is.
Huge.
Yeah, it's the biggest festival. It's the biggest festival we do. We've got, Common Fest is becoming just as big. It's definitely
growing.
It's growing.
Year. Yeah. It was awesome.
People-wise, it may be surpassing it. I know it's for Oktoberfest, it's really just kind of us giving back to the community, whereas Common Fest is the governor giving back to the state.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more
marketing that goes behind that, and promotion and everything.
And a lot more, a lot more participants. We went the first year. There was, I think, 13 breweries and 1 distillery. Last year we had 19 breweries, 10 distilleries, 6 wineries. Yeah. We'll have at least that, if not more, this year. And people now are fighting for the positions.
I had some mead there, and there was some really good mead.
That was, I think Joel and them are going to be back with Hive and Barrel.
Yeah, that was fire. was fire. It was different for me. A little sweet. I usually don't do sweet with my alcohol. So, it kind of threw me off a little bit, but then once I sat down and I opened the bottle at the house and just sipped on it, it was like a liqueur or something like that in a sense. So
it's pretty good.
So like here at Sig, what would y'all call some of y'all signature beers?
The two that coming are, I would view our two signatures, and we've got more that people we're known for, is the Pilsner and our 66.
Yeah.
We've had them from the beginning. In fact, the 66 was brewed before the Pilsner was, ironically, just because of timing and how we opened up. Those were the two beers that, when Dylan and I were talking about what would have Sig made at the time, that's what we came up with.
Okay.
We didn't quite have the recipe for the Pilsner. We had something close. And then Dylan, using his skills, crafted 3 Pilsners that we then kind of had a focus group, and it was like a little community event, and and this is the one that went out.
Like a soft opening.
It was right, a soft, but we did it months before the building. We had the building, but we didn't have it ready, and it was just kind of like a informal tasting, and
some close people,
and that's what we came up with. Yeah. And so we still have 2 other Pilsners out there that are fantastic. This is the one that kind of married. It was, we did a little Pilsner knowledge, and Dylan can correct me. There's Pilsners are either known for either being German, which is Bavarian style, or Czech, which they claim the birth of Pilsner. That's a Bohemian style, which is, so one's sweet, one's hoppy.
Okay.
Dry versus not. Budweiser is a Bavarian style, sweet. You taste that sweetness, that rice right on the front end, which is a traditional ingredient, but it works. If you take Pils Urquell, it's very dry, that hop stands out.
Yeah.
We went for the one in the middle. Being Americans, as Dylan said, kind of split the difference.
And
Swiss. Completely neutral.
Yeah.
And it works out. It worked, so when you drink the Pilsner, you get that initial sweetness on your front tongue that's then balanced by almost a lemony citrus on the back, which is the hops, but that cleans your palate out. Because once again,
and it's dry enough to not have a lingering aftertaste.
Yeah.
In fact, we've got a good friend that I won't mention names here, but he's known for a whiskey Bible.
Okay.
And that is Sig Pilsner. So he does all of his tastings every year in Frankfurt, and he comes down and will only drink Sig to cleanse his palate out between the whiskeys. Because it does have that. Dylan's done a masterful job of making a very drinkable beer, in some cases called crushable beers. Yeah.
I can definitely stand by that.
Yeah, and our Pilsner sells 2-to-1 over anything else. So that is our
4-to-1.
4-to-1. So that is our definite flagship. If is the Pilsner. The third. Those 2 are the ones that are on year-round all the time. But the third, I would say, is the Kentucky Common, which is really cool because it's a native style to Kentucky, and it's one of the only native styles in the entire country.
I had that the first time at the Common Fest.
Yeah, we had talked about the Common Fest.
That was like an eye-opening beer right there. It felt special just drinking it. I mean, first of all, where you're at.
Yeah.
Drinking it and everything for the Common Fest is amazing. You're at the Capital One. You're being able to have a Kentucky native beer, and it's just
So, Dylan's right. I'm going to brag on him also because this man was very instrumental in bringing it back from extinction. It was a beer that was pre-prohibition.
Okay.
Kentucky-based, because essentially it's a mash bill of bourbon to some extent. For the listeners, just some general alcohol knowledge. Everything starts with beer. No matter what spirit it is, you've got to make a beer first to get your alcohol distilled.
Okay.
So at some point in the 1840s, 1850s, because we had so much whiskey here, we also had breweries, but the brewers figured out that the bourbon whiskey ingredients were cheaper than what they were using for like their normal style German lagers or English ale.
Okay.
And so corn's cheaper than barley. So they started going, okay, well, if you're making beer for your bourbon, why don't we just stop at the beer stage and serve that? And so they just didn't distill it. And that became a Kentucky Common. And it became very prevalent in and around central Kentucky, Frankfort, Louisville, Lexington, specifically in Louisville. Some will say it was like unofficial drinking derby till Prohibition.
Yeah, they say when Prohibition hit, 80% of Louisvillians were drinking, or 80% of beer production was Kentucky Common. And then it completely died out after Prohibition, which
all
is
the breweries.
bizarre.
Because of all the breweries?
All the breweries went out. They were all done. So
Because of...
because of Prohibition. It was just over with.
Yeah, and at that time, lagers had taken over. When Prohibition came back, all the German, brewers were really taking over the market, and so ales were no longer, in style, so to speak, and Kentucky Common was an ale. And one reason for that is because it's called the Common because it was brewed for common folks, because lagers take time and a lot of attention to brew. Ales, you can kind of
put them out.
Yeah. And like you said, cheap ingredients combined with that, it was a cheap beer.
It was a beer for the people.
It was a beer for the people.
And
the people loved it.
Yeah.
And then it went away.
They were making it in insane amounts also. So, ales, lagers, the Common takes 9 days to make. Our Pilsner takes 32.
That's a huge difference.
A huge difference, especially when you're selling the beers for the exact same price. You can make a lot more.
And you think about tank capacity. I mean, you can burn through 3 batches of Common in the time it takes you to do one lager.
At one point, it was said that Erdler's in Louisville was making 380 barrels of Common every day. That's an insane amount of beer now.
Yeah.
That is wild.
And as Dylan said, it just stopped. And then people forgot about it. They remembered it, but they didn't have the recipe. And as Dylan said, beer flavors switched. We had the war start after Prohibition, after Prohibition. And so you had what we now think of the major breweries kind of have a rise because they were now supplying the army and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the smaller breweries did go out. They were already out. If they could not figure something out to do during those years of Prohibition, I mean, people forget, everybody closed. Like,
how long was the Prohibition period, just to remind people how long these businesses had to survive with these ingredients?
Wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
I think it's 11 years
of having to have, you guys were able to do everything out in the open, then having all these companies had to go underground, pretty much.
They went out. They didn't go out. They didn't
even go underground.
There were a few that survived Prohibition. Fall City being one where I used to work. Okay. But they had to pivot and do they basically became an ice making company.
Yeah. Yingling was ice cream. You can still buy Yingling ice cream, but for 11 years they made ice cream. Buffalo Trace here in town, they were lucky enough to keep open during that entire time as medicinal whiskey.
I got you. Yeah.
And also had to supply the military, but we went from in the whiskey world to, I believe, somewhere over 300 distilleries in Kentucky down to 4, and we've never recovered from that in that world. The brewing the same way. When we closed our doors at Sig's death in 1891. There were 34 breweries in Kentucky. When we reopened in 2018, we were the 34th brewery.
Wow. So it was just getting back to those numbers again.
Yeah. Now I think we're over 100.
This is like 50-something years. What? Hold up. Prohibition was, ended 19...
It's 1938.
20...
No, it started in 20s, ended in the 30s.
Like 32, yeah.
Okay. So, this is a huge gap.
Well, the thing that happened was, first of all, the breweries that were still around in that time were not being innovative at all. They were just like, how can we make beer cheaper? That was their big play. Like, how can we make more of it cheaper?
How can we make the most product and get the most money?
So they weren't going to do experimenting at all unless it meant making the beer cheaper.
Right.
And then the other big thing that happened was in 1976, Jimmy Carter made homebrewing legal again.
So you could brew as long as you wasn't selling it, or
you can brew at home. So now, distilling at home is illegal in most states, if not all.
Really?
But back then,
it's moonshine. I mean, that's moonshine.
Okay.
So anytime it's a tax issue, it's always been a tax issue. But you heard bathtub gin during Prohibition because people were doing that. They were distilling at home. Brewing was kind of the same thing, but.
Yeah, and then it took a couple of years after Jimmy Carter made homebrewing legal for people to open up homebrew shops and have brewing magazines and stuff like that. And
that's real culture and craft right there. When you get down to some of those, people who were making recipes and stuff back then, and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
And that's why you see like a bit of a rise up in the 80s, and then the 90s kind of had a boom.
Uh-huh.
And like you said, the bubble kind of burst in the late 90s, but the bigger hitters stayed around, like Sierra Nevada and Dogfish Head and those guys.
So it's really interesting to watch craft on a national, or actually beer on a national level, because you saw a lot of the big names disappear or get consolidated. So Stroh's was huge in the 70s,
Okay.
beyond big. Non-existent.
Yeah, I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Schlitz the same way. As Dylan said, Schlitz was a huge beer in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but they kept trying to make it cheaper, and the beer started to degrade.
Yeah, and eventually people just aren't
just stopped drinking it. You saw the rise of craft, but every time you see the bubble in craft, there's something behind it. In the 90s, it was all tech. And so you had all these guys making just obscene amount of money in early tech in California and elsewhere. Didn't have anything to spend their money on after they got done. So get into beer, because now I've got more money than I know what to do with. My buddies, I've got a hobby of making beer. Let's go open a brewery. So let's open a brewery, and you saw that kind of rise. And then the 2000s was cannabis. There's a reason there's so many breweries in Colorado. It's not because Coloradans like beer.
The marketing is the same to me too.
Yeah.
As far as the way that they do their beers and everything, the marketing is very similar with the cannabis and the beer in Colorado. So I was just out there, and when you go into craft beer places, they promote it just like they do their cannabis. So.
Yeah, it's the same industry out in many cases, because you do have. Dylan's got some stories. What? Is it Sweetwater? Who was the brewery you said that they had been infiltrated by the ATF?
Oh, that was Lagunitas.
Lagunitas, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had safety meetings in their and their employee bar on Fridays, and a couple of people found out about it. They weren't supposed to.
Wasn't supposed to. It goes hand in hand together. I love it.
Well, what was that? Or was it Lagunitas also that they didn't just call out the narcs, for a better word?
Yeah.
They sent out, without anybody's knowledge, a new label on a can. What was?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
He's pretty sure it was Lagunitas, because they did. They were anyway. The ATF was trying to connect. We're going to give credit because it's a funny story to Lagunitas. Connect the brewery proceeds to cannabis, which at that time in California was not legal, unlike California. Right. And so some of the employees may have probably been federal agents. And the higher ups found out. And so they switched over a label like mid-shift as everybody's canning. It said something about...
Whoa, let's stop everything. We got a new label to put on.
We got a new label to put on. They basically did an entire run of, something...
Well, Lagunitas to this day brews a seasonal beer called It Smells Like a Safety Meeting in Here.
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah. I'm going to have to get that just to try it out.
Yeah, I don't know if it's pub-only release, but it's definitely a thing. Yeah.
End result of after the canning line went through, they were about 4 employees short after the break.
Never showed up.
Never came back from break.
Yeah, I guarantee it. So before we go into the next subject, I think you have something here.
We don't know what we have there.
We don't know what it is, but it's something.
It's something in a bottle. So one of the things we are known for, other than our standard styles of beer, given the fact of where we are, it's bourbon country, we had to do a bourbon barrel beer. And we did it. Actually, the first beer brewed commercially in Frankfurt since we closed the last time was by us as well, and that was a winter warmer. We call it Santa Claus.
Okay.
And
that was fire. I actually bought a bottle of that.
It is spectacular. Yeah, we try to brew it every year in December. We shoot for St. Nicholas Eve, which is December 6th. It's a good story, Santa Claus. And then we age it for about 10 months in a bourbon barrel. In this case, it's always a Weller barrel. And so we're lucky enough to have a good relationship with a very local distillery that allows us to match beer to barrel.
That's a.
And this man's really good at doing that.
Yeah,
And
that's a hard pair thing to do right there.
we've been pretty successful at it.
Well, and a lot of breweries, especially on larger scales, don't have that
Connection.
the connection and not the ability to do it. And since we are down the road from one of the best distilleries in the world, if not the best distillery in the world,
Definitely the most award-winning.
and we have a professional and personal connection with them, we're able to get these barrels that people around the country would love to get their hands on.
They would.
And I've worked for breweries in other states before, and they're just hoping to get any barrels, even if it's a mishmash of from this company, that company, whatever.
If they can get their hands on a barrel,
If they can get, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we're very lucky that we can pair the beer to a specific type of bourbon.
You're going to get those notes, and we've done this where we then reversed it, paired the beer barrel bourbon back to the bourbon, or bourbon barrel beer back to the bourbon. As Dylan mentioned, it's especially larger scale. You're just trying to get bourbon barrel. Well, all bourbons don't taste the same.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And if you're
Even in between like a Weller and a Weller,
exactly, and
barrel, it's not going to taste.
they're not going. They all have their own nuances. But if you don't have those choices, or you're doing it on a mass scale, how you mask that is just leave it in there a long time, and eventually the beer is going to taste like bourbon. And that's if you don't like barrel-aged beers, that's probably why, because it does taste like bourbon.
It does.
It's like cooking in a dirty pan. Whatever you put into it's going to taste the same. So you don't get all the nuances. You get a heavy bourbon flavor, but there's no real.
There's no bite.
There's no bite.
There's no bite to it. You still get the beer.
There's no depth to it. Is what I'm going to say.
My favorite part about bourbon barrel beers is the wood character that you get out of it, not necessarily the bourbon flavor. And I've worked for a brewery in the past that I won't name names, and I know this isn't the only brewery in the industry that does it, but some of them, you don't want your beer sitting around for 10 months. That adds production time, cost, storage space. So they just dump bourbon in there. It's very illegal, but it does happen. And that's not what I want. I don't want that beer that tastes like you just dumped a shot of bourbon in.
You want a true infusion.
Yeah.
And really, I think, I said, I have no idea what's in this bottle, but, with this, let's go ahead, get popping. Let's open it. All right, let's see what happens.
You guys want to pour? Background guys?
We got glasses.
Yeah.
I'm not promising anything. It popped.
Hopefully it's good. Let's see what it is.
I'm excited. This is the team.
Oh, yeah. I know what that one is.
You do?
Yeah. Which one is it?
It's Santa.
Is it Santa? Oh, nice.
Yeah, this is a...
perfect time to get it. Perfect time.
You've been back here describing this beer for the past 10 minutes, and I'm sitting here going, I got it.
Well, there you go.
Gotta have that.
It is... Yeah, this would be our 2000... Actually, this would be our first barrel.
Oh,
This is the very first barrel we brewed and went into... First beer we brewed and went into a barrel. So this would have been... Cheers, guys. This would have sat in a Weller barrel for 10 months. And
Appreciate you guys.
absolutely.
So it would have sat in the bourbon barrel for about 2 months, and so
Smell it out.
Yes. So I'm gonna need some of this. Yeah. At some point.
would you say December 6th?
We started December 6th. It won't be this. It'll be the next one. We've got so every year. That's one thing that's also beautiful about being able to pair beer and barrel. It's always different. Actually, this is not Santa.
This isn't Santa?
This is
What is this?
This is the Stag Porter.
Is it? Mm-hmm. It's a little light for porter.
The chocolate.
Yeah.
It's the chocolate on.
It's super chocolatey.
Yeah, this is chocolate. This is Stag Porter.
Okay. Are you sure it's not the 66?
I don't know. This is not the
No,
Brand
okay.
66. No, it had a heavy bourbon. This is the Stag Porter.
This is super smooth.
It is super smooth,
yeah.
and we've not done this one in 4 years, so it was kind of a surprise. Santa Claus also spectacular. What I was missing, got the notes of the chocolate, but Santa Claus has notes of plums and raisins and currant. It tastes like drinking fruitcake.
Okay.
If you've ever had a really good port wine,
Yeah.
and I'm not knocking this because I could kill the rest. We are going to kill the rest of this bottle,
for sure.
and we may go get another one that's unlabeled. Actually, we'll get it from a different location, so I'll know it'll be different. But definitely you can taste the nuances to this. So it's bringing out. You've got, as Dylan said, that kind of wood flavor to the oakiness, the smokiness. But also
bit of vanilla.
the vanilla, but that's probably coming from, that's definitely coming from the oak itself.
Right.
So the vanilla is coming from the oak itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
And
you get with bourbons, the vanilla and the bourbons that come through.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of caramel.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
This is.
And I could definitely see like the stone fruits that you're looking for in the Santa Claus. That would be.
like I said, I can go pull one of those, and you'll definitely, if you want to save a little of this, we can then compare the two, and I'll let you two talk because I know where this isn't going to be very quick. We're just it out and make it look like I popped out screen.
No, we are. Yeah, no, it's you more than welcome.
So yeah, we can probably do that because I actually would want you to try something else against this because, like I said, this was just fun because we didn't know what it was. And I actually haven't tried this in a while. The reason I know it's the porter because it tastes like Derby pie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this has to be amazing to be able to have beer that you can just go and be like, okay, this is from this year, and I don't know what it is right now, but we're gonna crack it open and see real quick, and just be able to go back in your archive of beers
and the flavors change. They do develop over time. Like you can tell this is real mellow. Like it doesn't.
This is super chill. Like when you said chocolate, I instantly got the smoothness of like a chocolate or something.
But it definitely doesn't taste as alcoholic as it is. If it's the Stag, this is like
dangerous.
This is like a 9-10% beer.
Yeah,
but it tastes.
It does not taste.
Not taste like that.
And that's the thing with the bourbon barrel beers, you do have to have them a little higher because you're putting them in a barrel that has environment around it. And without the higher alcohol, they can go bad. And we've had some of our barrels go bad. It was not a great day for Tim and Dylan. I never want to repeat that day because we lost enough barrels that it hurt. But that also meant that we had some mead aging that we initially decided we were going to do a 7-year mead. Wouldn't release it at that time till 2025. We had that aging in the same room, tasted the mead. It was spectacular. Fantastic. We did not print the label, so it's a 3-year mead now. And ever since we've done that 3-year mead, and it's a good call on it. So, we do, so back to the experiments. Our mead is also non-traditional. And since you had some mead, some fantastic mead, but mead is, most people think of mead is kind of like if you were a wine drinker, a sauterne, a dessert wine, an ice wine. It's kind of sticky. It's kind of sticky and sweet.
Yeah.
Ours is more like champagne and not sweet. And it's light and bubbly and makes fantastic cocktails. And I do have some of that open. So I'm going to let you two converse and go find a bottle of Santa Claus.
About the age of this and everything real quick while you go run and get some of that.
And those are some special barrels. Like getting Stag barrels are not, that's not an easy thing.
It is not.
But
that's like Big Stag or?
That was Big Stag. That was an antique Stag. So that Stag that came out of that one would have been about 15 to 17 years old.
Anybody who knows anything about bourbon talk knows exactly what we're talking about.
There was still a fair amount of juice in that wood. So, excuse me. And I'll
Yes, sir.
So what I was saying is, you go into a brew pub of any type, whether, they've got 10 taps or 100, you always see Stella and Guinness because that's your light and dark. If you were in a something smaller or is more craft oriented, it may be something different, but people always drink light or dark.
Yeah.
When we were thinking through the branding, the styles of the beer, there was a lot of time and effort put to all the branding of this place. The labels that are on bourbon barrel beers, very much the labels that are on cans, because you could look at the can, it's very distinctive. As of, it's not a craft beer; it's a beer that you remember.
You can see.
You can see it.
Yeah, when you see it in a Kroger lineup or anything like that, that's where I've seen the Pilsner.
It stands out.
Yeah, it definitely stands out.
Yeah, it stands out not because of crazy artwork. It stands out because it looks like something you've had.
Yeah, it's like simplicity, beauty and simplicity. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be too much.
Well, when we designed our tap handles specifically as well, because I mentioned those, Stella and Guinness. Those tap handles. You can tell them across the room, 50 feet away.
As soon as you say both of them,
you know exactly what they look like. Yeah. And if you think about it, at that certain age, I can't read what's on the tap handle.
But I can see it.
And I have no idea what the robot, the lighthouse, and the mermaid is. So I'm going to go with something else. I know what the Stella or Guinness is. Yeah, and it's always kind of said that, when 4 people go into... to go hang out at a brew pub, whatever. It's those 4 people, they want to hang out.
Yeah.
one person there may have gone there because they wanted to try all the taps. The other 3 just want to have a beer and hang out with their buddies.
That's it.
And so that's why you always see those tap, and they will sell 10 to 1 over everything else. And so it's the kind of way we position our beers as well, is that it's something when you're out having a Sig in a restaurant, you instantly walk in, you see the tap handle, and go, that's a Sig.
So, on a marketing standpoint, you think you said that it outsells craft beer 10 to 1, right?
Stella and Guinness?
Yeah.
Yes.
So back to like, does that mean like original is better? Like,
It's not original. You think about where your sales come from. People are generally, they want to know what they're getting because of security.
If they pay for something,
they want to know what they're getting. Yeah. Some people have the luxury of being experimental and wanting to try everything. Some people don't. Some people just want to go and have a good experience. Like I said that.
It's the reason McDonald's is one of the biggest
Cracker
restaurants.
Cracker
people
Barrel.
know what they're going to get.
Right.
I want a double cheeseburger.
Absolutely.
I want a double cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to swing, flip this back to a question you answered or asked earlier. We started to talk about the community downtown. One of the thoughts of going into this place was at that time, there was nothing. There was actually just nothing downtown.
There wasn't.
There was literally nothing
downtown. It was
downtown.
a bold move to open up where y'all opened.
Well, we have foresight. Things are coming. We're still, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But, one of my cousins made a remark before I had even announced we were doing anything. And she said that, well, Frankfurt needs, this is right as the convention center had been torn down. She said, we need a new convention center, but we need it out where people eat by Cracker Barrel. And I heard a little inside, not that I don't hate Cracker Barrel,
That's why I was like,
but I understood what she meant because my family eats in denominations of 20 people at a time.
So we need a place that can hold large.
That holds large family. And you think about when you have a large group of people, some people can afford to have a bad time because they're going to do it again the next day and it's going to be fine. It may be good. It's part. Some people can't afford to have a bad time.
And that might be their only time they're eating with their family.
Thank you. That's exactly it.
Months.
And that's it. And so Cracker Barrel, McDonald's, they are consistent. They're not fantastic. You're not going to blow your mind, but you're also not going to have a bad meal.
Yeah.
And they also seat large people. Or not large people, large groups of people, possibly large people.
Possibly.
We could have that one out, but it's still true. It's still true. So a lot of that thought going into this place, even though we had just this little bitty building that we were going to build a brewery in, we needed to make it family friendly because of the branding we were going for. We're Swiss. We have beer gardens. Beer gardens are the community hub. We have families. We want, obviously, people with small children need drinks.
Both of my kids here.
Absolutely. We've had children grow up here. My girlfriend's kids have literally from birth up.
Yeah.
I've watched them
You
grow.
got the chalk wall. As soon as kids see that, they're running over to it.
Rocks. Who knew rocks were a thing?
I had to tell Milo about a million times, stop kicking.
Stop kicking.
Stop kicking. Wait,
my favorite.
Ask him to stop kicking. Some of them don't get. Some parents
don't
do that.
I'm gonna be on mine.
Oh, my favorite was the one time a good friend of all of ours. At that time he was 2. Goes, Mr. Tim. And I look over, and he's got handfuls of rocks just dumping him into his pants. And I'm like, okay, you're not mine. You're going home. Yes, I don't know, but it's important. It's important that people get out because that's how you meet, you talk, you have that conversation, and kind of the anecdote I was talking about. Going in just wanting to talk with your friends. Beers that kind of it speeds those conversations up, especially when you're drinking the same things. If you're thinking about our fathers, our grandfathers, they didn't go to they never asked what type of beer we're having.
They just drink.
You drank beer. And at that time, you drank what beer was local to you. If you're in Louisville, it was Fall City. If you were, someplace else, you're Baltimore, Natty Boh, Pittsburgh, Iron City. That's just Hams in Chicago. Yeah, it's just that's the Pilsner.
This is the Pilsner. Cleans the palate.
Yep.
No
so
long aftertaste.
you're getting a little sweetness and that little bitterness.
Pour our Santa there.
Yeah, that is.
Actually, no. Let's do these because I don't want to blow your palates out. We just got a clean palate. We're going to do the mead because I mentioned it.
Oh,
you've never had one like this.
We had meat on deck too.
It's going to be very light and almost
different than any mead.
It's going to be very different than any mead you've had. It's also going to be in color lighter than the Pilsner.
It's pretty rare for a mead to be barrel aged. And I want
So this was barrel aged. So this is barrel aged.
3 years.
3 years barrel aged mead.
Right.
And so we got this official because it's registered with the TTB. And so aged in Buffalo Trace barrels. So it said wheats barrel to beer. Weller barrels is Santa Claus. Stag was the porter. The 66 gets aged in Blanton's. Our red rye lager gets aged in Sazerac. My favorite beer, which we don't have, we'll talk about this.
By the way, nobody's able to do this. By the way, this is special. Like
R.E.H. Taylor is the best beer that Bill has ever done, and it's E.H. Taylor for a reason.
Like 2 or 3 of those. As soon as I tasted it, I was like,
just
I gotta
insanely
have that.
good. The way we do it, we do a Solero system. It gets fermented in the barrel. The flavor is just ridiculous. It's Willy Wonka. Yeah. But a good second is this mead, but you can see it's almost crystal clear.
Wow.
That's actually crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
Did not
first time I
expect
pulled it
that.
out of the barrel.
Actually crazy.
Yeah, when I pulled it out of the barrel the first time, I was like, "How is this so crystal clear?" Because
did it scare you when you first pulled it out?
It didn't scare me. It just surprised me. I was like, "This has been sitting in the barrel for 3 years, and it looks like that."
You can smell the sweetness though.
Yeah,
but when I taste it, is it not gonna?
No.
So it's gonna mess with my palate.
And so, if any of the listeners aren't familiar,
that is not like a mead I've ever had there.
Yeah.
If any of the listeners aren't familiar, mead is basically fermented honey water.
Right.
And so you can make sweet meads and you can make dry meads. This is obviously on the drier side.
But this is like more. I'm a dry person. Like I'm not gonna lie. When I drink wine, I'd rather it be more bitter, dry. When I drink
Lyle
beer,
has a question or a statement.
Where can you go to pick this up?
Here, only here. Like we have. If you turn around, there are boxes of it behind you.
I think when I
221 Merritt Street, Frankfort, Kentucky.
I'm gonna need to go ahead and purchase a bottle of this, a bottle of that, and probably a bottle of the Santa Claus. We're just gonna go ahead and split
these
it
are
all
from
up.
people who don't drink like that too.
Well,
I don't drink beer or anything. The last one that you gave us, amazing. This, awesome.
thank you. I appreciate it. They're like I said, they're all very special. They are special occasions. They're higher in alcohol because they need to be. This one is a mead, so it's up to the wine level of alcohol.
Like 13-14%.
We're gonna go with that. We'll accept your answer.
Yeah,
that's it.
What's it say?
I think it's 13.8. Really, what we have on it.
Yeah.
So, the best thing I mean, there's so many things I like about this mead. It is so easy to drink, but we have a list of cocktails we make with the mead.
Okay.
Because unlike the beer, does not go bad. It will become flat, but doesn't really go bad. But the mead doesn't need to be carbonated.
So as long as you keep these in these bottles,
You can those bottles almost indefinitely.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah,
indefinitely.
that Santa Claus is literally the first beer that was brewed here.
Yeah, I'm about to
5 years
open
ago.
I see
that one
I
up.
see the date on that thing right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's a special
And
bottle.
It gets better with age. It hasn't turned a corner yet. I've had beers that were 20 years old that were still tasting good.
They may be flat.
That's not every beer.
flat.
They may be flat, but they're
That's
still
not
good.
every beer.
Yeah.
You know, usually higher alcohol beers tend to age better.
If you treat them like
If
wine,
you found a 20-year-old Budweiser in a hot attic, I wouldn't drink it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, 100%.
on a dare, I would.
On a dare?
Yeah, on a dare, I would.
On a bad day, I probably
Yeah,
drink it,
that's
but,
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's, I mean, if you treat beer well, it's going to age like wine. It's not going to go bad. It may go flat.
I never knew that. Never knew that.
It's an alcohol, and so, but you can make beer go bad. I mean, when people think of skunking or
What is skunky?
skunking is when light gets to it.
Okay.
So
so it needs to be dark.
That's why they're in the brown
Brown bottles. You think
keeps the
Corona
UV
has a
out.
very distinct taste. It's a clear bottle. They didn't know this when they started making Corona, and it was skunked because it hops skunks in light, and that became the Corona taste. And then when they figured it out,
Their taste.
they then had to add it back in. Miller High Life is also a clear bottle,
I remember that.
but they use an
Are
extract.
is Miller High Life still a thing?
Unfortunately, no, because that was a fantastic beer.
That was the champagne of beers, right?
It's a fantastic
That's
beer.
what they call themselves.
Absolutely.
The champagne of beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was, growing up in Kentucky, like my granddad was huge into bourbon culture, huge into alcohol culture, and that's actually who, I would say introduced me to it. You go down to his house, he's smoking cigarettes, he got a bar in his house, and, I'd go down there, and he had a little bit of everything over times, and, like, I would sip on stuff, and I would see stuff disappear, and then I'd see stuff come back and disappear and come back, and over the time period, like you said, some things stuck around, some things left. Not sure why Miller High Life left. I felt like it was a decent cheap beer. It was one of the first beers that I had that I could drink.
It's not even just a decent cheap beer. It's a very good beer.
I felt like it was. I didn't have the palate for it at the time. I was probably fucking 17
Well,
years
also
old.
you think about at that time, like me getting out of college, you were a little bit younger. That's when craft was getting big. If you weren't like the old school beer drinkers, I'm always going to drink Budweiser. I'll never drink anything else. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's Budweiser. That's, I don't want that. I want to try all the craft breweries. So it kind of gets lost. It did have a resurgence, but just because of economics.
Yeah.
Miller merges with Coors. Coors merges with Molson.
Got you.
It was not selling as well as something else, so it's a brand that gets lost. Unfortunately, it's maybe the best beer they made. Coors Banquet, also a fantastic beer.
Coors Banquet?
Coors Banquet.
I haven't had that.
Two thumbs up on that. Two thumbs up on
Yep.
Coors Banquet.
Okay.
If you liked Miller
Absolutely.
High Life, you'll like Coors Banquet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very similar.
It's also
flavor
called
profile.
Coors Original. It's got like the oranges
It's
label.
I've never
orange
had
label, and it's got a very
Oh, okay.
distinct.
Yeah, I've never had a Coors.
Okay.
It's
I wasn't a beer drinker before, honestly. Before I came here, I wasn't a beer drinker.
okay.
And
I love
that's
bourbon.
one of the biggest compliments we get is when
No, I
When
literally
people-
y'all put me on beer. Like I went to the one brewery that I did go to. I went to Mirror Twin up
Okay.
in Lexington because I lived in Lexington for a little bit.
Sure.
So I went to a couple of the little breweries around there, and they had a peanut butter stout that it was like the first beer that I was like, oh, this is different. And then when I came down here, like every single one of y'all's beers was different. Like I felt like it was. Like you said, it reminds you of our original, but it's got this mix to it that's slightly, y'all.
Yeah.
Like,
It's drinkable.
And like one of your guys said, like, I don't even really drink beer, but this is good. We hear that a lot around here.
The first year we were out, Dylan and I, and that was kind of the best comment because we had some really odd comments. Odd at that time. Now we understand them, but we were one of the first and only lager houses, and we may now be the only lager house. No, actually, Blue Stout. They're not
Blue Stout.
completely lager.
Stallion is kind of.
They
Like
used
Milan?
to. They used to be all lager. Now they do. Now they do some other things.
Yeah, I knew a couple guys that helped start Blue Stallion, and
It's great beer. Like I said, it's
well,
great.
other than Hofbrauhaus.
Yeah, Hofbrau. Yeah.
They did a
Hofbrau, yes.
habanero something.
That's
that
kind.
was
That's
like a little different for me, but
Yeah.
it was like it was different, but it was something that my palate had never had. Like
Yeah.
That's kind of the newer things of Blue Stallion. Tradition when they started out, it was very traditional. They had a German
it
brewer.
was.
And they
yeah.
were doing that, but it was still unique in the craft world. To have a Pilsner at all, and that's what we really showed up with. But consistently, we would be at these beer festivals with, great breweries, lots of different styles, but people consider, I don't like beer, I like yours, or, oh my God, that tastes like beer. And first, at first, it was like, okay, what's it? And then we realized there was a very specific age range that had never had beer.
Real beer.
They had craft beer a lot, but they actually hadn't
That's
gone
mine.
and had.
My generation.
I'm pointing at a generation. Yeah,
No, it's
but
cool. We can call it how we see it.
it is. It was. It was the late, early millennial, or now kind of the younger millennial
I was born
generation.
in the '90s, so like
Yep.
growing up, it was
Absolutely.
my first beer wasn't even a beer; it was a malt liquor. Somebody brought me a 211, and I thought that's what beer was, like malt liquor.
And if you didn't like it, you were like, hey, yeah. It was like, no, I don't like
For
beer.
the 211, I drank it because my friends drank it, and I was like, that was the worst thing that I've ever did.
So if that's your first experience, or your first experience was your friends dragging you out to a craft brewery that may or may not have been good, just not your palate, still thinking that's what beer tastes like, and then have an actual traditional style beer, Hofbrauhaus or otherwise, they do taste a lot different.
But now I know why I
And
like y'all so much too, because I didn't real. I'm a lager guy. Like over time, I've realized
most
I am a lager
people
guy.
are. Like I said,
Most people are.
Many people are. By the numbers, they are.
And it's funny because the taste shift kind of in the same way the industry shift. Where like you get into craft beer and like, oh, okay, I like these IPAs and I want to try this experimental beer.
I've seen some like Lucky Charms
Yeah.
style like,
Experimental
and it's like, oh, what are we
stuff.
doing here now?
And
Like,
then eventually most people will be like, I just want a Pilsner. Like,
that's all I want. And that's I'm kind of
I had my
that's what I
crazy
do.
experimental college phase, but
Well,
But
you
let's be real,
also
was it good?
right.
but for a lot of people, that's exactly the experience. They're kind of exploring it through. And so you'll get a flight of however many, 10, 20, 3, 4. You may not like them, you may not like any. You may find 1 out of 20 you like, but it gave you some conversation. But then at some point, you just want the conversation. You realize, I don't want to sit here and talk about beer. I actually want to talk to you.
Yeah, and I don't want to waste my money on just spending on whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that
You
people
kind of
always
get
want
out
to
of that.
experiment,
Sure.
You kind of get out of that phase at some point. And, we we're kind of jumping back and forth. But one thing I wanted to point out about the ingredients, Dylan mentioned the German 4 ingredients, which we pretty much try to stay with that. By and large, simple wins, but also simple keeps you from having a hangover. And if you think about the times you've really hurt the next morning, it probably was a double pumpkin chocolate stout IPA.
Way too
That
much sweet.
everything in
Yeah.
it. The more things you add into beer that aren't supposed to be there, the more you're going to get that effect. It may taste good at the beginning, but you're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think craft brewing right now is, I wouldn't say there's a bubble bursting, but there are definitely breweries falling off. And I think a lot of that is that there was this experimental phase and all these breweries opened. And it really takes a gentle hand to be able to make an experimental brew that is going to be successful. So some people were just putting out bad beer.
That takes time, don't it?
It takes time and experience, and it takes know-how,
Yeah.
And not everybody has that, especially when everybody and their brother is opening a brewery. You're going to have...
Or brewers.
Right.
Like, you get what I'm saying?
And
Like,
some-
Yeah. And I'm
I
not
made a
trying
couple
to...
batches at the crib, and now I say that I'm a brewer.
Right.
Like, so...
If you had enough money, you could definitely do that.
Right.
And people have done that. But I make a point.
Yeah.
And there's some markets that will support that. So the bigger the markets, like coming back from New York, we had some great breweries. We had some okay breweries. But they weren't dependent upon the same people coming back every day. They literally may see the same person one time. So they can have some experimental, not so great, or as you mentioned, throwing Lucky Charms into it. Maybe they do one beer and throw 4 different cereals in the same base, and now they get 4 beers. But if you've got the people coming through, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
At some point, as Dylan said, though, those brewers, if they are good and they learn and they get better at it, they're going to say, okay, that was just stupid. Like,
Yeah.
I'm now
Yeah.
going to make
That was
really good beer.
experiment.
That was experiment. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was me trying to do
something, I went for it, and I realized
for
it wasn't it. Learning experience, chop it up.
And you've seen some even breweries grow, expand, mature. I think right now, craft brewing is maturing. We're still seeing new breweries open, but
When you go to Lexington, it's almost oversaturated, like in certain places.
we've lost a few in Lexington, unfortunately. Yeah. I think Rock House reopened.
I heard they did, yeah.
Unfortunately, we lost
Rock House?
They went out there, but someone bought them. They're reopening.
Okay.
Fusion, we lost. Not through anything in the market. They had great beer. Just
I'll say 2017, 2018, there was a lot of breweries in Lexington.
There were.
It was like the hot thing
yeah.
during that time. It was like craft cannabis in a way. It came, and everybody flocked to it. Everywhere that you went, you seen like the same group of people, and it was like, just trying different type of beers.
Well, and they were also a little late to the game. I mean, things started in Louisville because it's the bigger city, but
Right.
you had West Six and Country Boy who kind of just controlled the Lexington game for years.
They did. Yeah.
Until people
And
decided
great beer, but they did control the game there for a little bit.
It did.
Yeah.
And then you also, but as Dylan said, you got newer breweries. And Lexington has, by and large, great breweries.
They do. Yeah.
Louisville's got, the same. Kentucky's kind of lucky. I mean, I've been to places, Asheville, North Carolina. 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago, they had a brewery. They were at that time, North Carolina was in the 3-2 rules, so it was near beer.
What is the 3-2?
3-2 everything had to be
3.2.
3.2 or less. So it was 1/3% beer.
By weight, not by volume.
Yeah.
So it equals out to about 3.8 by
About
volume.
3.8. So it was almost beer. But they had a brewery.
Yeah.
It's Asheville, North Carolina, the East Coast kind of hub of brewing, a brewery less than 20 years ago. So of that, I can also say that as many breweries as they have right now, by size, Louisville and Lexington have better breweries. There are places like that. Per ratio.
Yeah.
So we do have great breweries in Kentucky.
We're
a little bit later
we're
in
pretty
the day.
blessed here in Kentucky.
We are.
Whenever we get our hands on something, we make it us. And whenever we make it, we do pretty damn. I'm not here to toot our own horn, but in Kentucky, we do our thing with whatever we put our hands on.
Yeah.
We're known to mess up some good laws, but besides that,
Yeah, I was gonna say
everything else that's the craft part of it, the care and the people that's actually putting the grind into it and the effort into it, they're the ones who's making the product.
And we're still brewing beer in a bourbon state. Let's not.
So, like, with it being a bourbon state, does that affect y'all's like business at all?
Oh, it helps our business. And the thing is, if you go back to the history of Kentucky, we are late to getting to things, but beer in a bourbon state, it really at the time when we got into it in the 1800s, it was bourbon in a beer state. Like there were.
So when it was KY Common, it
was KY Common, it was a bourbon. It was a beer state.
Yeah.
There were more, whether it's true or not, the anecdote in Cincinnati, northern Kentucky, there were more Germans in northern Kentucky, Cincinnati than there were in Germany. That might have been true. There were so many breweries up there and so many Germans, and Frankfurt is called Frankfurt for a reason. It's not because of Frank's Ford.
Right.
It's absolutely not. I mean, we, when I've got our family records, Frankfurt had a German benevolent society, and it was basically the city's party planning. Everybody was on it, but they would plan like Sunday socials every week. The parties, the parades, everything was done by the German benevolent society, and so. That was a big part of the culture at the time. But bourbon came later.
Yeah, and people talk a lot about how, the Scottish came over and kind of started making whiskey here, and that's how bourbon came. But people don't talk a lot about how there was a big German population here as well. And Cincinnati was a huge epicenter of beer back in the day, and obviously
was
trickled down.
Ground for everybody.
Yeah,
like it was a very diverse place. For the time period.
When we think about,
and in parts of its history, it was the second largest city in the United States.
Really?
And people, that's why it's called the Queen City.
Yeah,
because it was number 2 behind New York for about 20, 30 years until Chicago took them in population.
So with y'all being in the community and the culture of beer, how do you guys feel like that you guys have affected Kentucky as a whole, or this region, or whatever? I don't mean to. I feel like you guys have led the way in a lot of stuff. Maybe not a lot of stuff, even if it's behind the scenes. I feel like you guys have paved the way for a lot of other people to be in the culture and do some of the things they do, whether it's craft or historic or whatever they do. How do you guys feel like that you have made your staple for the rest of the culture?
That's very kind. Thank you. We do feel, like I said, try to be as humble as possible. I just know where the culture of Frankfurt in particular was before we opened. It's different now. It's much more of what I was used to in New York. It's definitely the downtown area is much more a community, much more family oriented in the sense that it's a communal family. It's progressed. There's some great businesses opening downtown that may or may not have opened 5-6 years ago. When we opened,
that are open later than 5 o'clock.
Yeah, that are open later than 5 o'clock. That was the thing. That's
real.
It's real.
We're in Frankfort, Kentucky. Look it up. It's real.
When Sunday sales in Frankfurt happened after we opened.
Sunday sales. We didn't even sell alcohol on Sunday for the longest.
And so, the first year, we were the only thing open downtown on Sundays. Sundays now are
taking the risk.
Second or third biggest day.
Yeah.
And downtown, Sundays is packed with the bourbon tourists. People, there's a vibe downtown.
It's so lively down here now.
Yeah.
You see so many people that aren't from here, and then you see the people that are from here, and the mix between the people.
So what we've seen over the 5 years of the people, especially the tourists that we get in, and what we've also seen is the bourbon culture quadruple.
During COVID, it was like people got bored.
So projections at Buffalo Trace at that time, they were hoping to hit 300,000 by 2025. They're at over 800,000 now. It's insane. But we started to see in the tap room where people coming from out of town, they were always bourbon tourists. They're here for Buffalo Trace, but they weren't staying in Frankfurt. They were going to Lexington, Louisville. They came to see Buffalo Trace. What we're seeing now is they're staying in Frankfurt, whether they're seeing Buffalo Trace or not.
Yeah. Right.
And we're seeing a lot of people coming to Frankfurt that don't even know where Buffalo Trace is, or bourbon. They know we come to Frankfurt because we love Frankfurt. We come in here once a year.
It's being in the shop and having people come through. They're like, no, we genuinely just like Frankfurt, and I'm like,
yeah, that's kind of
it. Again? And they're like, yeah, we're from so and so, and like we come to Frankfurt, and Frankfurt is just this little gold mine. Like, not even a gold mine. It's a hidden gem.
Yeah. And we have
if you've
people
never been here and you're not used to the slow life,
right,
it might not be your place.
So hopefully this is climatic, not anticlimactic, but this has been aging now for 5 years. So
2019.
We bottled this, or we barreled this in January of 2019. We bottled it on October 1st, 2019. It says it's 13.8. Bottles lie.
Bottles lie.
All right, let's see what happens. Perfect. All right, guys. Glasses.
Thank you, sir.
And this one you are going to get the complete essence of fruitcake. And so I want you to do something before you taste it. So bourbon's always described with having legs because of the viscosity of bourbon. You never hear that term
with beer. No.
So swirl it. And then watch the legs.
You can see the oil still on the glass.
What?
Yeah. If you get a really oily bourbon, you can really see that on the glasses.
If you don't know what legs are, you take bourbon and you swirl it around. Leaves these little streaks coming down. And can you guys explain that a little bit more than me, because that's about all of it I know about it.
No, like Lyle is. It's the oils in the bourbon. It's the what you're getting is corn fat. Okay. So the oils sound nicer than corn fat, but corn fat is right. That's what brings the silkiness to you. So cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Good seeing you all. Thank you for this again. Definitely smell it. You're getting lots of Christmas. And what we describe this as stone fruits, cherries, prunes, currants.
And there's no fruit added to
There's
this.
none.
This is just barley, yeast, water, and hops.
So 4 ingredients. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Barrel aged.
Just mastered.
Yeah. Barrel aged. But,
also, what Dylan has not mentioned, this beer has the exact same yeast our Pilsner has in it.
What the fuck?
So
I haven't had it in a minute, so it kind of like took me by, surprised me a little bit. Because it's like you said, it's not this.
No.
At all.
No.
No.
No, I said, when I smelled that, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get the sweetness. I go, no, this is chocolate. That's stag.
Yeah.
No, it's not this.
This is something special.
Yeah, no, stone.
Nah, this is what I bought 3 bottles of right here. This was the one.
This is what every single beer that I want to drink tastes like.
That I want on a T-shirt and also on a label.
Yeah,
that's exactly. That's
every beer.
That's about the best affirmation we. That's every beer I want to taste like.
This is a special beer. That's a sharing bottle. You're not meant to slug.
Do not. From personal experience, 2 of us sat down and drank a bottle. We had to get a car. We had to get a driver to go 2 blocks.
That's the main thing I remember about this. This is why I got it, because the reason. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And gentlemen, anything that's open, come get more of.
I'm definitely coming back for that bottle.
Exists by the end. The whole reason that I drink alcohol compared to beer was because I have really bad heartburn.
Mm-hmm.
So the less that I have on my stomach, the less that my heartburn acts up. It's not really what I eat thing; it's how much volume is in my stomach. So I couldn't drink 4 or 5 beers like my homies. My homies would go get a 24-pack and go kill 8 of them, and I just could not do that.
Yeah.
I would be pissing all night, and then if I'm not pissing all night, I just feel like I constantly got to throw up and have heartburn.
Yeah.
With this right here, you have 2 or 3 of these.
This is a sipping.
sip that.
No, it's a sipping.
Yeah.
Sipping.
For sure.
And it also doesn't. So back to the people that don't like beer, like our beers, for numbers of reasons, this drinks more like a wine. It drinks more like a port or Madeira. It's something that you drink in a
higher
4-ounce glass.
alcohol-proof like it's
an
not
aperitif.
alcohol, it's not malt liquor, it's not wine, it's almost not beer in a sense. Like
It's almost like on the alcohol level of liqueur, but it's not sweet like a liqueur.
nowhere near.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Nah,
definitely an after dinner drink. You want to nuance. It's got just nuances. You're going to sit by a fire. You're going to have hang out with your friends.
Same
And
thing you would do for like a port wine.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's got a lot of the same notes to it. So this is the biggest one. Well, alcohol by volume, the mead is our biggest one, but the biggest beer is this one. But
if you guys come to Frankfurt and you're in the area, this is the suggestion that I'm gonna come in December so you can get this. But if you're not here in December, get whatever. But if you come in December, please
We try to keep it around.
try to Santa Claus.
We try to keep it around. Our releases are in December, but it's available most of the year.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and so we have up to 6 different barrel aged beers. Just depending on when someone comes through. We just recently released a collaboration with Scout and Scholar in Bardstown. That was our Vienna Lager in
No, it was a double.
Dunkel. Double Dunkel. Okay, it was a Double Dunkel in Buffalo Trace
I
Bills.
remember the donkey.
So-
Man, I forgot all about that.
Yeah,
That
so
was fire.
there's something like I said, it's fun. Yeah, when we get experiment, it's not crazy, but what we end up with is some really good product.
High quality.
High quality product.
Yeah.
Sometimes it surprises us. Usually in a very good way.
Right here?
No, that was
When you
not.
tasted it,
No,
kind of had it like a.
no. That was
Yeah.
one we knew going in was going to be a Rolls Royce. I mean,
Yes.
the ingredients we use, you can't get any. You're not going to get something bad out of it.
Yeah.
Was it
So
as spectacular?
What's this Asian?
That's Weller.
So this is the one right here.
So everything you look at the mash bills of each, whether it's high in rye, high in wheat, low in rye, everything's going to give a different flavor to it. The ones that were surprises, E.H. Taylor was a surprise.
Yeah.
No idea that was going to be as good as it was.
Yeah.
The mead was a shocking
Oh,
surprise.
I guarantee it. As soon as it came out off the color.
Well, it took us 3 years to
Right.
even try it. We didn't even try it for 3 years. It stayed in a
Yeah.
barrel, so it was like what Schrodinger's cat. Is it alive or dead? And you didn't know.
Open it up.
Yeah.
Forgot about it, and it's like, all right, well, we're trying beer in barrels. Let's open that one up, and it's like, oh shit.
Shit. That needs to go into a bottle right now.
Yeah.
And every year it's gotten better. We did a 4-year mead just because back to COVID, kind of offset the years, like absolutely through the roof. Actually, I think that's the one we have right now is the 4-year mead.
Okay.
We also did a 2-year Santa Claus, also spectacular. So if anybody's in Frankfurt, happen to come in, it's going to be on a whim. Please do not ask us for the exact dates, but if you grab a Santa Claus and it says 21 on it, you scored the lottery.
You got the lottery. You hear that, right?
You got that. Yeah,
So if you see this episode, you better go ahead, get in your car, ride down to Merrill Street, ride across the street from the transportation building, and come down here and get one of these bottles while you can. Because I guarantee, if I don't get them, one of these two will get them, and they'll be gone. So
we'll have more coming out. We still got some aging in the back. Where we are right now, we're expanding. So hoping to get our beer out to the rest of the state, which has just not been a thing until now because of just the fact that we can't make enough.
right.
And now we can. So people, definitely we ship to the west. So if you're listening to this and you're down in the west part of the state, Paducah, our beer's in Paducah.
Awesome.
So
that's
we're
what I was
going
going
to
to ask
be-
next. Is there any future plans of expansion?
We're
or-
expanding out to the rest of the state and going beyond Kentucky in the next year. So
That's fire.
definitely going. I
Y'all
would
about to
say
be blessed. Y'all don't even know it.
look for that very distinctive can that's as you mentioned, on the shelves.
Yeah.
So, what are the questions you got?
So for real, when you guys got this going, I'm sure you guys have dealt with some hard times and stuff, and y'all spoke about a couple of them through COVID and everything else. And is there any advice or insight that you would give to to the younger generation that want to get into the industry or into the game from each one of y'all? I want to hear from the marketing standpoint, and then I want to hear from the brewer standpoint. Like, what type of advice would you give to anybody that wants to get into what you're into?
So, people getting in the industry, whether out of college, second career, whatever it may be, every new company is a startup. No matter what industry you're in, whether you're in tech, whether you're in brewing, whether you're, a marketing firm or something you're manufacturing, you're a new company, you're a startup. Yeah. And all those pains that happen with startups, the hiccups, you don't always get it right the first time. The people that you start with are not the people you end up with. And you've got to understand that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just not a fit. And you hopefully you'll learn and you can grow and you just keep moving. With that, it's, we, a year in, we got hit with COVID. The U.S. got hit with, everybody got hit with COVID. Yeah. But as far as our business, we had tremendous 2019. Going into the 2020, we were looking at double production, and then everything stopped.
Right.
So things got better, and we learned a lot of things that we're now expanding upon were because of that, but that was a huge hiccup, and a lot of people went out of business. The ones that were out of business, you could argue COVID put them out of business. You could also argue that they may have been going out anyway. Yeah. And it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate. We've lost some really great companies in that time. So, getting into it, have a passion for it. Because you're going to be living this. Yeah. Like, if you don't like what you're doing, don't do it.
It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's an absolute lifestyle. I mean, this is not a 9 to 5.
Breathe this, right?
Absolutely. Right. And, if you're getting into the brewing industry, there's not much better business to be in. It really isn't. The community is fantastic. The people, your customers are fantastic. You're doing something that has such rich history and nuances, and it's just it really is just fun.
It's beautiful.
It's just a lot. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. No lie.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome to hear, and I hope that motivates the next generation to be like, okay, I want to learn more about this right here.
Yeah. As far as from the brewer perspective, this job is fun, but I want to. A lot of people come in like, oh, you're a brewmaster. You just get paid to drink beer all day. No, it's
do your homework.
It takes a lot more than that.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm gonna let you know, just coming from a person that comes from like the craft or something, I don't see that in you.
Right.
That's first and foremost. I see you as so much more than that, and I hope people do as well. Like,
I appreciate it.
You guys are a team. You guys are a team, and it takes the balance to create what we have.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to add kudos to this gentleman and brag on him a bit.
Please do.
And I hope not to throw some of the audience under the bus, because craft brewing has some great beers, has some great brewmasters in it, and they have some people that just jumped into it and have learned to get better. This gentleman put his chops in. Like, this wasn't someone who just said, I'm going to go make beer, open a brewery. Since I own the brewery, I'm going to be a brewmaster. No, he journeymaned his way up from apprentice to actually selling
from the bottom
apprentice all the way up to where he is now with some major
to brewmaster.
Yeah, it's like, and that thing is, you put your homework in.
No, that's what
and if you want to be successful in the brewing world and have the respect that you should deserve when you get to that point, do your homework, put your chops in, put the hours, the time, the years in it takes to get that. Learn from people that have done it before you have. It's not coincidence a man makes good beer.
That is, he learned from something or someone.
And I'm going to end on the reason that where all this came together, because when we met, talked about it, didn't talk for a little bit, for a couple weeks, got back. We got back together to do some tastings, really explain the concept, had a kind of a party, and we talked about why we're doing the Pilsner. And that was the night Dylan's in the back of my car. We're driving back, and he goes, I studied under a German brewer. I can make a Pilsner. And that cinched it.
That was it right there.
That literally was it. Yeah, okay, I got this.
Did you feel nervous before you
concept.
said that or anything? Was it like talking to somebody that could potentially be like your business partner or anything? Like, was it like a risk that you were taking, or was it something that you felt confident in? Or?
I felt confident in it because it was the truth. You know, like that was my background, and I put years of hard work in. Not only on the job but at home studying. And
you really had a love for this, right?
I really
no matter what, this was your lane right here.
Yeah, and I jumped in with 3 feet.
Don't sneak. Get this camera.
But yeah, I jumped in with 3 feet and said, "This is what I'm doing. I'm going to do it well,
no matter what.
Yeah,
this is it."
And so in that situation, I was a little nervous meeting somebody who could have been my future employer, but I wasn't nervous about saying, hey, these are the steps I've taken to be prepared for this job.
Like, because it was true.
Yeah.
You really put in the work and the grind and the effort to make sure that you were the person that anybody would have wanted for the job.
Right. And that's what I would suggest to people who are thinking about getting into this is be willing to put in the work.
When nobody's looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, do it on your own because you love it and because you want to do it. Don't do it because... I just want to drink beer every day and have a cool money. Job or make money. No, do it because you are about the game. You want to do it, and maybe you have a talent for it to begin with, but you got to hone that. You can't just rely on that.
Yeah. Because hard work beats talent when talent don't work hard.
Right.
So you might be naturally talented at it. You might even have your father might have even been in it. But if you're not putting in the hard work, then it's not even going to matter at that point.
Yeah. Well, and it is the hard work. It's not only just it's all the things that you do before anybody sees what you've done.
Yeah.
And the last bit of advice I would have for anybody getting into any startup is understand that you're getting into it because it's a passion. Hopefully, you're getting into it as a passion.
Right.
But have the realization is you won't be doing that as much as you think you are.
Right.
You're doing.
So I'm understanding that.
Understand that.
I'm
exactly.
That now.
As
Being
your business.
the owner of my business, it started off as like a craft thing. I was just doing the craft of, and then it slowly led into like, well, damn, now I am doing other, like I'm not just doing this.
Yeah.
I have to focus on a lot of other things.
You have to pay bills.
Yeah.
Literally write the checks. Not just find a way to pay bills. You literally have to sit down and find time to write a physical check to pay the
to call these people to
talk
to them. It's crazy. And man, I just want to say, like, I want to give y'all's flowers before we get off this thing and say that I appreciate you guys for who you guys are, and like both of you all have motivated me in different ways to be who I am and to continue to do what I do for the community. So
brother, you've brought things to the community. You remember what Frankfurt was 5-6 years ago. We didn't have anything downtown. We had some great people. We had kind of pieces of a really good puzzle, just no one really put it together. I always said Frankfurt was lacking the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. In this case, it was lacking the brewery. It was lacking the barber shop. It was lacking, things that we're starting to get now, more of the rest of the cultures. Multiple coffee shops. They're all fantastic. Yeah. We're getting design, my background's really in design. We're now getting design companies coming down, opening up recently.
I've seen like a whole spot. Now, this place has been here for a minute. I don't know if people have noticed, but there is I forget what it's called, something proof downtown, but they have marketing and everything. They got a little bit of everything. They can help you with your business. Like if you have an idea or something. I'm not really sure what it is.
You're talking on Main Street? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So they do. Yep.
Yep. Is it Mooch? No, it's next door to where Moochie used to be.
It's next to Moochie's Diner. It's right next to it. It's basically they do podcasts and marketing.
Yeah. If you have an idea or anything, like there's places in Frankfurt to go to be able to hone in on those things.
Right.
You feel me? And then if you're looking for like, you just gotta, I feel like you gotta go out there and try it. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. Whether you're in a small town, you're in a big town, I think it's just going out there and putting the effort in. And if you build it, they will come over time. So,
and generally, if you find a need that you want something, someone else probably wants the same thing.
For sure. For sure,
It's not
especially
just
if you're already in the culture of
Right.
whatever it is, like you know people are looking for it, like, and you're like, okay, what can I do to help this be a thing in my city, be a thing in my region, wherever I'm at, and you guys have definitely did that for us. So
We appreciate
I
it.
just
Yeah,
want
we
to say
we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
for representing this community and being an ambassador to just creativity and craft in general, and for Frankfurt. So yeah,
Well, it's something that we all have to stick together on, and we're all pieces of the puzzle. You know, there's nobody more important than anybody else. As a community, we're all pieces of the puzzle. So as long as we all stick together and realize, like, this is what we got, let's make the most out of it.
yeah.
And it's a pretty damn good community.
Oh, it's fucking beautiful.
I mean, that's what I said. People ask me moving back from New York, going, how's that? I'm like, well, initially it was a little different. It's a little kicking and screaming. But what I've got to explain, all those years I was in New York's not a big place. It's a very tiny place. It's 85 tiny places stuck together. It's all Mayberries. You literally are only interacting within your neighborhood.
With your borough.
With your borough. Well, not even the borough. It's the neighborhood. Even
deeper
smaller.
in the borough,
your 8 square blocks that you live in, and that's what, like, those are your friends, those are your family. You see them every day. That downtown Frankfurt, it's just one of those. So we're getting to that point of exactly what I had in New York City, and the mentality and the community downtown. And the people live downtown, and unfortunately, if you don't live downtown, that is just unfortunate.
It is.
It's just unfortunate because it is that where
I love it.
we are getting to a point. I've always said a sustainable community is one you never have to leave. And so, if you don't have to leave your neighborhood, you've created something special there. You've created an ecosystem that everything you need is within arm's reach, and you leave because you want to, not because you have to.
Right.
And Frankfurt's getting to that. In fact, we're getting to some point that, I would say oversaturated, but we're having people realize this, and we're getting great people moving in.
We are. We're having a lot of more movement here in town, and it's scary to some, and to others, we embrace it. I think that Frankfurt is a place that, it's a place of balance. It's a place of balance. It can be as fast-paced or slow-paced as you want it to be,
Right.
and if you come here with a good idea, we completely embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
The culture here is completely welcoming with open arms. It is Southern hospitality, but there is a sense of still competition. If you're gonna come here, please come with your A game, and come with pride, and come with the sense of I want to care about the community. Because if you don't come with that, you probably won't last here for real.
No, you won't, because it is a small community.
It is a small community.
And
I'd say 35,000.
The county's 52, but downtown we're less than 5.
Downtown
we're less than 5.
Yeah,
it's a thing. So you do know your neighbor. This is one of those things that I say watch your P's and Q's. That's not really true. But on the other hand,
you do have to watch it. Because you say the wrong thing or you do the wrong thing, and it can affect your business because it is so small.
I think that's true in any real urban setting, though.
Yeah.
And we're just a microcosm of a big urban setting. We aren't, as you mentioned, New York or Chicago, et cetera, or we're not a sprawling community like Nashville,
right.
where things may or may not be as, we're not the burbs.
Right.
At least downtown, we're not the burbs.
No,
we're not the burbs. So, plan on being involved, and that's what you're going to be, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah, if you want to
will
open
be
up
involved.
a business downtown, you have to be involved.
You're involved.
There's no question.
You're involved.
There's no
And
question.
I mean, I spent the first year just remembering people's names, and that was the hardest year I had.
I'm still going through it. There's so many people. I'm like, "What's up, G? How you doing, sir? Yo, what's good, man?"
Yeah, that's kind of why it's like, why do you call everybody brother? Because that's all I can remember.
Listen, man,
it's like I see them, I know them, I recognize their face, and I know I've seen them multiple
about
times.
your kids and your dog
Absolutely.
and everything. I just forget your name.
You put alcohol in the mix, it gets even harder.
Oh, for sure. And, you get to drinking, and I'm like, you're the Sig guy. I've seen you at Sig like 5-6 times now. So.
I met you. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. And this has been another episode of Culture Of. We're here with Sig, and it has been a beautiful episode. I really appreciate y'all
Thank you.
taking the time
appreciate
out and giving us the space to be able to come into and make it our home for a little bit.
Honestly,
So,
you're welcome to use this anytime you like. So if you need a space, but yeah, we appreciate you being here.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Until next time, y'all know where we are. We're on YouTube. Please check us out. We're on TikTok. Please check us out. Until next time, peace out.